In this video, we're going to show how to set approval status and send it across from Tekla Structures over into Tekla EPM. Okay, so let's start out with what are we talking about with approval status? Well, essentially it is the status of whether or not drawings have been approved by the engineer of record, and especially shop drawings and erection drawings that get submitted for approval from the detailer through the fabricator and out to the general contractor and off to the design team. Typically the architect and engineer of record need to do a shop drawing review and verify that design intent has been met. Now, let's actually walk through kind of where this is set both in Tekla Structures as well as in Tekla EPM, and then we're going to showcase how are we going to marry those two things together. So in Tekla Structures, basically I have a drawing here in the drawing list, and if I go to revision, this is where we set the revision data. And in this case here, I'm setting Rev A for this is the first time this is going out for approval, and I put a description here. And then if we actually go onto the shop drawing itself, in the traditional workflow, we're going to see usually down here in the title block that there is a Rev A for approval and a date, and sometimes who submitted it for approval, etc. So there fundamentally is how you set essentially the approval status of drawings within Tekla Structures. But this doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. Well, it means the same thing, but it isn't going into this the typical field in Tekla EPM for approval status. So let's go ahead and go over to Tekla EPM and take a look at that. Actually, this just gave me a great idea. I'm going to show you how to do something special with the Tekla EPM export from Tekla related to approval packages. So if I come over here to Applications and Components, I'm going to type in Tekla EPM, and there's the plugin. So check this out. This is something a lot of people don't quite understand. And the difference between submitting something for approval versus for fabrication, you can kind of change some different things here because different deliverables and things are going to be in an approval package versus, say, a fab package. And typically a lot less information. Usually we're just submitting the drawings for approval, and we won't include CNC files or anything else. So watch this. I'm going to actually come in here and say select the drawings from the drawing list. I'm going to uncheck the include from bill of material. And really, I don't need anything other than general arrangement drawings. And if I'm doing multi-drawings, then I would include that. And if I'm not, then I don't need to worry about that. I can include part UDAs and all that, but technically by turning off this include bill of material, really none of this stuff down here actually matters. Really, all we're doing is we're exporting the drawings, and this is on purpose. So some fabricators, they prefer not to import any bill of materials into Tekla EPM unless it's really truly released for fabrication or revised for fabrication. And that's so that way they don't accidentally fabricate the material. So I'm just gonna say no to all of this stuff except for select drawing from the drawing list and include general arrangement drawings and any UDAs. Now, if you only have assembly drawings, no problem. It's going to go ahead and export those. So the key here is really unchecking this include bill of material option. So I'm going to select my drawing. You don't need to select any of the parts in the model. And from here, really all you need to do is just say, after the drawing is selected, export to Tekla EPM. So here we've got basically the package created, and I am now going to import this in. Okay, so over here in Tekla EPM, essentially I'm going to start with File, Import, and then I'm going to go ahead and go to the Production Control option and choose XML. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to browse to this second package here that I just exported from Tekla Structures, and we'll go ahead and say import. Now here it's going to again bring in the job number and the name from Tekla Structures. I'm just going to call this _1 for a test, and then we'll just go ahead and say save. And here it's asking me, do I want to create a project management job? And yes, I do, because I'm going to be within Tekla EPM, whether I'm the fabricator's document control department or a project manager, I want those drawings to import in, and I want as much of the status information and all that there and the revision number there, so that way I can produce a transmittal to send these out for approval. So I'm just going to go ahead and say yes, and then this is just basically the CNC directory where anything imported would go, and it looks like everything has been imported. Now, if I go to production control on this job, okay, so if I go to this 002_1, which is what I just imported, notice that there are no bill of materials. So none of that assembly and part information was imported here because I unchecked that include bill of material option within Tekla Structures. So again, some shops prefer this because it ensures that, hey, no parts and no materials at approval that have not been approved and shouldn't be fabricated, nothing has been imported technically into the system. However, when I go to project management and then I open up that job, we're going to go ahead and see in the drawing log here. So at the lower right hand corner, we can go to drawing log and we can look at all the drawings, or we can look specifically at the assembly drawings that were imported here, or just type detail drawings. So we'll go ahead and open that up. And we'll see here that assembly drawing B6 at revision A has been imported here. Now, the key thing is that this is where I'm talking about the approval status. The whole magical point of this video is this approval status field over at the right hand side. And so here are all those drop downs of different like options and codes that tie to the approval status that is up here in maintenance. So maintenance, again, project management, approval status maintenance, all these codes, whatever that you want to set for approved, something being on hold, approved as noted or rejected, revise, resubmit. You can customize these and set up the short codes here as well as the deeper descriptions. Now, this is pretty important because this approval status it's tied to the drawing, but it can be shown here in the, we can actually even add it to the list, and then it can also be set here. Now, the fabricator just has to choose, do they want to set this and have somebody do a batch edit and kind of update all these drawings that they've imported and set this before they send it out for approval? Or we can get the detailer to do that, which is exactly what I'm going to showcase here in a second of how to get that done. But this approval status will appear here. It can also be set to appear in production control, which is important for fabrication management and production tracking. And then it can also be set to appear in Tekla EPM Go. So in Tekla EPM Go, you can see here I've got a red box around the approval status of like IFS, so issued for fabrication or in for fabrication. And so this is really important because if you've got tablets or certain stations, production stations, and there's a computer out there where you've got your shop personnel accessing Tekla or Tekla EPM Go, they're going to see this approval status data, and it's pretty important for them to know. So like if for some reason there were some bill of materials and things that got imported and the approval status was switched to hold, or if it was not issued for fabrication, then essentially the shop should know that, hey, I'm not supposed to touch this and I need to go ask a question and see what's going on with this. So this is why approval status is so important. Okay, so I want to go back into the drawing log here within Tekla EPM and just show you that, hey, the revision number did import, and you can see that in the list. And then at the lower right-hand corner, you'll actually see the revision data for the drawing. And so this is where it gets a little bit confusing because as a detailer before, I'm like, hey, I know that the approval data and revision information has been set on the drawings in Tekla. It's set on the drawing list, just like I showed at the beginning of this video, and I submitted it for approval. That stuff is supposed to come into Tekla EPM. And it does. It does come in, and here you have the revision number and the description and even the date and everything, right? So all this information is here, but this approval status is what a lot of fabricators are trained on, and again, it appears everywhere, so we also want this to be set as well. And if we want to save some time for the fabricator, we're going to set this in Tekla Structures. We're going to go modify the Tekla Structures reports so that way that data is also included. So I'm going to show you that here in a sec. Okay, so here within Tekla Structures, let's go up to the reports dialog box, and we're going to scroll down here to all of the Tekla EPM reports. Now, all of these different reports are leveraged and utilized in order to create the XML file that the Tekla EPM plugin uses. So what we see here is that there's the bolt nut washer report, there's a drawing user defined attributes report, part and part user defined, and then stud and stud user defined. So this is a drawing level status. So what we probably want to do is we're going to either modify the drawing status, and in fact, actually, I will take that back. This drawing status report, I think that this is actually only used upon import of data from Tekla EPM back into Tekla Structures. And so that's actually a little bit different. And this is a little bit misleading because I thought it was for the export, but the default UDA and status that's in there does not actually export into the XML. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually modify the user defined. And there is the drawing report, and then there's the drawing user defined. Why would I not modify the Tekla EPM drawing one? Well, the reason is because this is kind of like the core set of minimum information that needs to be exported by Tekla EPM for drawing information. And you'll notice that the version does increment. And I don't want to have to mess with that report in case they decide to change or increment that. I have never seen any of the user-defined attributes increment from version 1. And the reason is that these user-defined attributes reports were designed for you to be able to add your own custom attributes and value fields that will go across into the XML. And so my recommendation is, if at all possible, unless there's some sort of rules or things you need to change in the main reports, I would just modify the user-defined ones. So we're going to go into the Tekla EPM drawing user-defined version 1 report with the template editor, and we're going to modify a value field in there or add a value field so that way that drawing status can be sent across. Now, we need to go ahead and figure out which user-defined attribute on the drawings that we actually want to use. So there's a lot of stuff that's already out of the box, including these user fields that are already here. And on the workflow tab, this is a lot where like kind of status information is set. And so there is like a drawing other info, and then there is a drop down of drawing status. This could be used, but again, these codes don't necessarily match what's in Tekla EPM. So my recommendation is, because fabricators may want to customize and have different approval status codes in Tekla EPM, I would recommend, especially if you're a detailer working for many fabricators, etc., I'd probably recommend having this as like an open text stream and just use one of those UDAs. So we could use, something on the workflow tab here, like this drawing other info, or, drawing user field 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, something important to know is that this drawing other info, this is actually the user-defined attribute in the drawing status report for Tekla EPM, and this is where data will be actually set when you import approval status back into Tekla Structures for Tekla EPM. I'm not going to demonstrate that today, just because that's not like a common workflow. It's mostly pushing data from Tekla Structures out to Tekla EPM, but maybe I'll make a second video that kind of covers that. So let's just go ahead and say that we'll see if we can find this drawing other info, or we'll use like one of these user-defined attributes here in a second. So let's go up to the template editor. Let's go to editors under the file menu. We'll go to template editor, and then that should open up the template editor. We're going to go to open, and we're going to go into the USA environment. And so rather than under Imperial, all these reports are actually in common. So we'll go to common. We'll go to then Steel, Reports, and then the 450 reports for Tekla EPM are going to be inside of here. So now we're looking for that Tekla EPM drawing user-defined version 1 report file. So I'm going to open this up. You might get a message here just saying, hey, this was last edited in the old template editor. Not a problem. Just say okay to that. Again, the first thing you ever want to do whenever you're opening up and going to modify a template that's in the install Tekla Structures, first thing you always do is save as and save this into your model folder. You don't, in case you mess up or do something wrong, you don't want to lose your original copy of the report, which is in the system. Plus, we want to save this in the model folder or into our firm folder, so that way we can share this with other people in our organization. So let's just go ahead and go back up here, and we will go to Tekla Structures models folder. And I've got this model that we've been working in here. And so I don't need to change the name or anything. It's exactly the same name. We just want it in the model folder. And a report file found in the model folder is seen earlier or in a higher priority or rank in the search order than it is in the actual system folders. So we should be good to go here. Now, when you look at this, you'll see that this is a tab delimited file. So there's a drawn by information, checked by data, and then check date. And then there's these little tabs here. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert a value field. So we'll just say insert value field, and we're going to go ahead and try to find essentially the correct drawing attribute or user-defined attribute that we're looking for, that is where we're going to enter this information. So there's that workflow tab, and there's that drawing approval other. And see how it says drawing other info? So just remember this, dr underscore approval underscore other. That is where this user-defined attribute is going to be written to. So we're going to go ahead and select this, and we want to get this as tight to that tab as possible. And so notice when the red row, this is actually the header. So this is the top of the file, and it describes the headers or names of the attributes. Then these are the actual value fields, and the blue row is like each of the drawings in the drawing list that get exported. So I'm going to go in here and just take a look at this. And so there's this check date. Now what we're going to do is let's just copy this. We'll cheat and say copy, and then we'll just paste this in here. And then I'm going to actually copy the tab. Or no, you know what? I don't need to, because we're not going to put another thing after that, so we're fine. So let me just see how many values this is. This is 20. I'll just make this match just so that everything's nice and tight. So 20 characters there. And there we go. Now I'm going to change the header here. Instead of check dates, I'm going to call this approval status. And that will be the variable name that gets exported into the XML file. And then you can also change the value field here, so we can just call this approval status field, and you can't have any spaces in there because it's a variable name. And so there we go. We've got that all set. We've put it inside of our model folder, right? So we took it out and saved it, did a save as, and put it in our model folder. We'll hit save here, and then we should be good to go. So watch this. If I go inside of my drawing, go to user defined attributes, and then I go to the workflow tab, there's the drawing other info. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is in for approval, and we'll go ahead and say modify. All right, so now I've got that data set, and if I export another package to Tekla EPM, essentially that approval status should now export and link up. Now, what if I actually want to show that approval status here in the drawing list? So I've already done the work, and I'm going to show you how I did it, and you'll see here that there's this column drawing other info, and notice that the UDA name there is dr_approval_other. Okay, and then I can see that status here. So if I go inside of my model folder, basically all you need to do is create a new text file. So if you just right click and say new, and then a text file here, text document, what you'll do is you'll call it document manager UDAs underscore. I would just say whatever your company name is, right? So you don't have to put the underscore here, but I'm just putting a prefix because it's a great way to say that if these are any UDA names and stuff that or things that I've kind of customized specific to my company, I can put my company name here or initials or abbreviation as a suffix. Now, all I got to do is I open it up and I take that dr_approval_other, which is basically the value field name or the variable name that's defined in the objects IMP file that actually defines this field within the Tekla database and for drawings. I just put this in here, and then and the file's in the model folder. You can put it in your firm folder, your project folder as well. You'll reopen the drawing list, and there you go. You'll see that this is here. And you can reorganize this, and there's an XML file that actually controls the order in which these things will appear. But you can put this wherever you want. So this is really handy, so that way you can kind of actually see this as a detailer when you're doing your submittal packages. You can verify that all the codes and everything are correct. So we've got everything done here. I'm not going to show it just to save some time, but basically I'm going to come back in here. I've created a for approval statusing, with everything set the way that I want. It's going to use read the printed drawings or the PDFs. We're not exporting CNC files, and we're just only including the drawings and none of the bill of materials. I'll make a new package and show you how the approval status came in over into Tekla EPM. Okay, so back over here in Tekla EPM, we're going to go to File, Import. We'll do Production Control XML. I'm going to browse to this second package that I just made here, and I will say Import. Now I'm just going to do another project here just for an example, and then we will say Save. I'm going to create a project management, and here we go. Notice here that on the import field mapping, there is the approval status that came in from essentially the XML file that came across from Tekla Structures. And now we just need to select which field that we want to map this to into Tekla EPM. So I'm going to do drawing approval status. And so I'll just go ahead and say set. And now the approval status in the XML file from Tekla Structures will map to the approval status in Tekla EPM. So we'll say OK. And we could save this as a new import type. I like to keep things out of the box for myself so I can do demonstrations, but basically we could say yes and name this. I'm just going to say no, and then we'll just say okay for this, and everything should have imported. Let's go over to project management. We will find this second job here that we just did, and I'm going to go to the drawing log, and we'll take a look at all of the detailed drawings here. And so now when I select on this drawing, you'll see that the in for approval or IFA basically status has been set. And so again, this now would be automatically set rather than the document control clerk having to do this. They could filter by this and create the package from all of this, etc. And then essentially what would happen is if I do an issue for fabrication, like an IFF as the detailer, basically what I could do is I could just set that in Tekla Structures, and then IFF could come across when I do the Rev 0 package. And again, that would be able to be seen in production control, Tekla EPM Go, and it would be very easy for the fabricator to see that, hey, this is actually something that's been approved and able for me to be fabricated. Now, again, hold is also handy too. So the H, so if you had to put a drawing on hold or something like that, the H signifies to the shop that, hey, I'm not supposed to touch this assembly. Something's on hold about it. And the detailer could also pass that status along as well. If you found this content useful, please subscribe to our channel and press the alerts button to be notified when we upload new content.